Felting tools, what you need and how to use them.
Wichtige Thema, Materialien.
Let's talk about tools. You've probably already noticed, I always work on a tabletop, and that tabletop is covered with a special kind of plastic foil. It's not something I picked at random. I chose it after a lot of testing, a lot of trial and error, and many, many felting experiments. I've been using this kind of foil for quite a while. You can find it at IKEA or in some home improvement stores. It's usually labeled as a drawer liner or a shelf underlay. There are lots of different types and textures out there. And after trying so many of them, I discovered something important. The texture of the foil really changes how the wool behaves when the fibers are laid out, and you start to move and rub them. A textured foil, especially one with a diamond pattern, helps the fibers come together much more quickly. Surfaces with raised dots, like the Variera liner from IKEA, can also work. But the dots tend to push the fibers apart. The diamond pattern, on the other hand, helps the wool stay in place and bind together naturally. We'll include a link to the exact foil I use, but of course, feel free to explore and find what works best for you. I'm really happy with it, and many of my students have started using it as well. Now, a quick note for beginners. If you're just starting out, I recommend using a simple, inexpensive version first. Try it. Make sure it suits you. Gain confidence before investing in more advanced tools. If you already have experience using bubble wrap or other felting surfaces, go ahead and stick with what you're comfortable with. In the end, it doesn't matter what kind of base you use. You'll get good results either way. Now let's talk about other helpful tools. One of the most important is a scale. I use a digital kitchen scale. It's easy to use, and I can weigh all kinds of wool and materials with precision. It doesn't slip, and it keeps my workspace tidy. Most of you probably already have one at home. Use whatever is available, as long as it's accurate. One tool that's really important, especially when we're working with a variety of fibers, is the carding brush. There are many types. The classic wool carders are large and heavy, and they're used when you need to prepare and open up fibers before felting. I personally use carders mainly for silk fibers, to loosen them, separate the strands, and create a more even, airy texture that's easier to work with in the layout. This makes the silk blend more smoothly with the wool during the felting process. I'll show you exactly how I use them, but just keep in mind, the big carders can be heavy on the hands, and they're not always necessary. That's why I usually reach for two smaller carders, which are actually meant as accessories for spinning wheels. They're easier to handle and work just as well for my needs. And here's a little tip. Cat brushes, yes, really, can do a very similar job. They're inexpensive, lightweight, and available in most local stores, perfect for small amounts of silk or fine fibers. One thing we absolutely need is a felting net. I really like using mosquito netting. It's lightweight and perfect for working with fine wool. If you felt often, I recommend keeping a piece about 2 meters long at home. It's great for larger projects, but you can also cut it into smaller sections for precision work. You can substitute it with ironing mesh, but the grit on those is usually too coarse, so be careful. Now let's talk about soapy water. You have a few options. You can use grated bar soap and dissolve it in warm water. Personally, I prefer using basic liquid dish soap. It's easy to measure and adjust, and I find it works really well. If you're just starting out, liquid soap is a great place to begin. From there, you'll find what works best for you. To apply water, I use two kinds of spray nozzles. They help me wet the wool evenly and precisely. I also use a traditional felting ball sprinkler, but if you don't have one, No problem. Just take a simple plastic bottle, poke a few holes in the cap with a hot needle, and you're good to go. What matters most is the function, not the appearance. And finally, gloves. When I'm working with wet layers and blending fibers, I don't use my bare hands. I use long protective gloves. They protect my skin, and they glide more easily over the surface. Funny story. The gloves I use now were actually designed for veterinarians. It was a bit of a mistake at first, but they turned out to be perfect. They cover my elbows, and they glide beautifully over the wool while I work. You don't need anything fancy to start. Try what you have at home. Even disposable gloves work for testing. Find what feels right, and once you're sure, you can order a better pair online. Let's talk about what you actually need for fulling. The stage where we bring our felt to its final strength and structure. I'll show you a minimal but effective set of tools, just the basics to help you work with more ease and control. Of course, you can always add more helpers over time. One very important tool is a textured mat. I know, it can be a pricey investment, but there are many alternatives. Some people use carved floor mats, and that can work too. What really matters is the fine, lidged surface. That texture helps the fibers shrink and lock together much faster. It can truly speed up the fulling process. Another thing I use all the time, gloves. You can use regular household gloves. That's totally fine. I personally prefer more durable ones, usually from the professional workwear section. They last longer and give better protection, especially when working with hot water. And yes, I do work with hot water. My hands don't tolerate too much water over time, so gloves are important to protect them. As for size, I always choose extra large gloves, even though my hand size is usually a 7 or 8. Why? Because even when my hands are wet, I want to be able to slip the gloves on and off easily, without wasting time struggling. You'll also need a simple plastic bowl. Nothing fancy, just something to hold warm water while you work. Now, let's talk about something a bit more advanced. The sander. I know. Some people feel unsure about using one. It may seem noisy or complicated. So I'll try to give you as much helpful information as possible. The sander I use is from Makita, but the brand doesn't matter all that much. What's nice about the Makita is that it's relatively quiet. Still, the noise also depends on your table surface and how much water is involved. So the machine alone doesn't determine how loud it will be. For years, I worked with a sander that didn't have adjustable speed, and it worked fine. But recently, I switched to one with a variable speed setting, and that makes a big difference. If you're buying a new one, crease. Don't save on that feature. The ability to change speed is really useful because I use different settings at different points during fulling. Now, one more very important thing. Your sander should have a clamping mechanism. That's because we don't use the machine the way it comes out of the box. It needs a little preparation before it's ready for felting. Normally, sanders come with an abrasive surface. Designed for sanding, of course. But that's way too rough for wool. It would damage the felt. So we cover that surface. If you've looked around online, you've probably seen many ways to do this. People come up with all sorts of clever ideas. What I use is a diamond-patterned foil. Yes, the same kind I use under my layout. It gives great friction without tearing up the wool, and it distributes the motion evenly across the surface. I first found that texture on a drawer liner from IKEA, but later I saw similar materials at Bauhaus too. Keep your eyes open. There are always new options appearing in home stores. You can even use bubble wrap. It softens the movement a bit, but it still works. Just turn the sander up to a higher setting. That way, you still get the friction you need, and the movement of the machine reaches through the layer. It's all about balance. Enough pressure and friction, but not too much damage. And in the end, what matters is that you find a setup that works for you. There's no one right way. The real decision is simply use a sander or don't. If you do, I am sure you'll find your own method to prepare the surface just right. That's it for now. These are the main tools I use and recommend to make your felting process smoother and more enjoyable. In the next chapter, we'll explore the materials themselves, different types of wool, silk, and how they behave when felted. See you there.